whether you have the negotiating teams up to the mark. What would be the contribution of each partner in their particular task and their rewards, as well as protect any proprietary rights information, addressing the termination clause. If there are any, if there is a poor performance, then what would be the penalties? How would be the arbitration procedure in case of termination of this contracts? So these all is taken care of in this negotiation part. Now, usually, the companies think of establishing a cordial and long-term relationship with one another at this negotiation stage. Now, both of the parties should be eager to form a solid foundation with the positive approach and long-term relationship. That is what is expected at this stage. Now here, when we are looking for the partner, or maybe when we think of evaluating different partners, so during the preliminary phase only, the companies take into consideration the interest, objectives, and see whether the strategy of a particular company fits into the preview of the other company. Here, this negotiation process explores or lays a platform for an opportunity to create basics of trust or foundation of trust and develop a problem solving attitude among these companies. Now here it is also expected that the establishments of these businesses would operate with a future plan, that is a proposed plan of the alliance. Now in alliance negotiation, different areas require particular attention, including putting together negotiation team, the pre-negotiation phase, preparations, the negotiation process itself, and formalizing the ultimate agreement. That is the last step that you come up with the agreement, actual agreement. So these are the 4 points involved in this negotiation process. So putting the team together, as such, there is no particular formula or there is no particular equation for determining who should be at the negotiation table. Both the senior level managers and the middle level managers are considered for negotiation process. This executive level team is established for the commitment and strategic parameters of the negotiation. Now, when we take into consideration the top level or the executive level managers, they are concerned with strategies, framing of strategies, and financial fit. That is how beneficial would be the other company in terms of strategic outlook and financial investments. Of course, when we take into consideration the alliance partner, then the company thinks of some motives. Maybe it wants to increase its market share. Maybe it wants to take an advantage of the brand name of the partner. Maybe it wants to gain more return on investments, or with the help of technology of the competitor partner, it wants to move ahead in the market. So this strategic part is looked out by this executive level managers. Hence, they form a team. Similarly, the next level, that is the second level team, comprises of division heads. Now, when we take into consideration the executive level team, we are speaking in terms of corporate level. The second level team, that is division heads, that is we are speaking of sub units, strategic business units, individual middle level managers are considered here. Also, the legal, financial, the market and technical experts are considered in this phase. So everybody will have their own outlook. If you consider a technical expert, he may include a clause in the agreement. Market expert, financial expert, legal expert, they may have their own views or opinions that should be taken into consideration in this negotiation part. Basically, this second level team looks into the operational fit. More it's related to processes and day-to-day issues related to ventures implementation. So when the companies will form a venture on day-to-day basis on the operational background, how it will work out. That is what is the lookout of this second level team members. It works out that the details of the contract, its structure, partner contributions, that is both the partners, how, in which way they are going to contribute, their management, their structure, their functionalities, etc. are considered here. Now, who should be on this team? No. Experience is a definite asset. Those people or those managers who have the experience, those who are senior members, they should be considered here. But along with them, even the middle level managers should be taken into consideration, because in future they would be the senior level managers. Hence, these experienced managers would help the second level managers in shaping out the contract or shaping out this agreement. Experienced managers, it is expected that they have a critical outlook, while second level managers would think about the pros and cons of each and every clause included in the contract. Now, we should also have a contrarian on the team. Now, who is this person or a manager who can identify and counter group think? Now, here his role is to challenge assumption and look closely to potential problems and ensure negotiators are realistic and objective in assessing the proposal. So here this person, if he finds that in the clause there is something irrelevant, he may just send the warning signals to the other members of the company, so others understand the reality. Now, the best thing is to avoid direct involvement of legal counsel as a negotiator. Here, his role is behind the scenes. That is, like we have in dramas, there is a writer who is behind the scenes. Similarly, here, this legal counsel helps you in each and every pros and cons, but not on the negotiating table at that time. Negotiation aims to establish business framework for alliance, and hence conflicting pros and cons should be avoided. Once the structure, the blueprint or the mainframe is established, then the legal counsel has his role to play here. The other phase is pre-negotiation preparation. So here in this pre-negotiation preparation, all the team members, they come together and decide the preparations. That is what all should be included in this negotiation or the contract basically. Who would be on the board or the team for negotiation? What would be the role played by the managers? So here a good preparation will always help to move ahead with the negotiation process. If there are certain arguments, certain conflicts on the negotiation table, then both the teams should mutually understand each other's roles, strengths, weaknesses, and try to analyze them. So here there should be a good preparation or good homework from both the parties before entering into this negotiation process so that there is no ambiguity left. So here one by one the clause are considered. The evaluation process is considered in this pre-negotiation preparation phase. Now next is the actual negotiation process. Now when the negotiation process starts, it should be an open flow of information. There should not be any restrictions or restricted flow of information. If any party has some doubts and if they question on the negotiation table, the other party should be ready to answer these queries and resolve the issues then and there itself. They should also take into consideration what both the companies have in common rather than looking out for differences. So, how the strengths of the companies would be beneficial for both of them, that should be discussed instead of focusing on the differences. Maybe uh, as far as vision of the companies is considered, the goals are considered, or the cultural background is considered. Even though they are different, what exactly is common, that should be materialized. Based upon mutual interest of both the companies and building consensus is the main part here in the negotiation process. Now, during this phase, spelling out or looking into the mutual benefits help negotiations uncover really unrealistic expectations. That is, what is the strengths that should be focused and how long one can go. The expectations from the other partner should be realistic. It should not carry unrealistic expectations. Both the parties should know each other well, clarify expectations and benefits about each other, identify the shared goals and objectives. So basically, what is the intention of entering into the business? So many a times it happens that is left out and the focus goes to some other thing. So here the emphasis should be on the shared goals or objectives. Now in this phase, companies should try to avoid the legal issues or the technicalities because that would give a competitive edge to the other partner. So this should not happen. It's better that the companies focus on operational planning, that is how to implement once the alliance is formed, how to go ahead with the strategic planning part. The processing is more important. That is the operation planning in day-to-day activities should be specified. That is clarify the goals. Personnel selection, which manager should be included into which section and from which company. Here with the proper justification, a team should be framed. The resources needed by both the companies. There should be proper reporting systems for this. The desired results, for the desired results, there should be cost controls or brackets set as far as the financial aspect is considered. Now, the pre-negotiation phase should have identified proprietary knowledge that needs to be protected. So, before disclosing proprietary data, managers must be sure that their competitive advantage is adequately protected and make certain negotiators have well briefed on what is appropriate to share. So, here, when you are entering into the alliance, if the part of proprietary protection is there, then what all is to be disclosed, to be shared with the partner, should be discussed in the pre negotiation phase itself. One should not think of opening all the cards in front of the alliance partner. Now, if the company wants to disclose about the technical expertise or the research and development part, then ideally it should be patented and confidentiality agreements should be signed to cover this sensitive information to preclude prospective partners from using disclosures in a competitive manner. So here it's the responsibility of these managers to protect their intellectual properties, and they should be properly mentioned in this agreement. Now, what are the key issues to address during the negotiation? There is a letter of intent. A good letter of intent will greatly facilitate the drafting of a binding or legal agreement. Now, what all should be included in this letter of intent? The first and foremost, very important part is why the companies have come together, the purpose of alliance, what were the objectives of this alliance, what exactly they want to achieve, the scope of activity, what would be the scope of this alliance, the key objectives and responsibilities shared by both the parties, both the companies, what would be the method for decision making implementation, resource commitments, assumption of risk, and division of rewards, the proposed structure of alliance. So, all these issues should be mentioned in the letter of the intent so that there is no query from both the partners once everything is mentioned in the letter of intent. Apart from this, the day-to-day operations, the problems related to R&D, the investment, everything has to be reported to the managers who take care of it. If certain problem arises, who would be the responsible person and from which company out of the alliance. So here there should be proper justification when you think of assigning a particular employee for this role. And the next part is the agreement. Legal agreement, it should be well written and set out the purpose, terms, duration, warranties, obligations, and other key understandings on which the relationship is based. So, all of these things should be properly mentioned appropriately in the agreement. The venture objectives should be taken into consideration, level of commitment, and very important, the contribution of both the parties. So if both the parties are from the same industry, that they are competitors, in that case, what would be the role? If they are from different industries, then what would be the role of both the companies? One would be manufacturing the product, the other would be just distributing the products. So in this case, it becomes much more simpler, as company or the party is dependent upon the other company. But when both the companies with the same background and industry come together, then there is a possibility of involvement of some complexities as far as the contribution of both the companies is considered. Now, again, it depends upon the market share of both the companies, whether a particular company is a leader and the other one maybe is at the lower level at the growth stage, or both of them are just leader and followers. So, these are some of the factors here. An organization structural congruence with the ventures strategy with an appropriate incentive and reward structure should be framed. The benchmarks, the performance objectives, and the review process have to be analyzed properly. Now, this is with reference to strategic planning process. What were the marks with certain expected outcomes, how the things are performing, and the review process, whether things are on line with the plan or there is some diversion. If there is diversion, then what are the reasons? And again, take a review and make changes in the planning part. A description of role and responsibilities of the parties should be mentioned. Now, there are 6 aspects of alliance agreement that should be included. Now, it starts with the mission statement of the companies. What is the mission of the company? What is the structure? And how would be the governance? Now, this helps for the partner interaction. When you think of structure and the governance part, it helps for partner interactions. Partner interactions, when we say the companies interact, it means the managers are interacting among themselves. And that's why the role should be specified. The ownership and control. Control is about the ability to influence behavior and decisions in a partnership. So, who would be taking the decisions? What would be their scope? Who would be having the control? All should be mentioned. The performance objectives should also be mentioned clearly in this agreement. There should be also clauses for termination in case these agreements get cancelled or terminated in future. Then what would be the clauses? That should also be included to be on a safer side. There should also be conflict resolution procedures. As two companies have their own vision, they have their own individual objectives also. They have their own cultural background. They have their individual capacities and expertise. So it's natural that over the time there may be difference of opinion between both the companies. So what is the resolution procedure? It should also be highlighted in this. So this is about the agreement. The next part is implementation of this alliance management. Now, two different aspects of implementation have been identified as much more critical. One is the integration and cooperation part, and the next is the learning. Now, once the alliance is formed, then the next phase is immediate implementation. Now, this implementation phase deals with the operational part. Here, this integration is achieved by the integration teams through the cooperation of employees. These integration teams are working groups made of managers from different parties who are assigned the task of identifying the practical ways of implementing the alliance. So here the basic responsibilities of the managers is identifying the practical ways of implementing the alliance, how this alliance should move ahead with their roles and responsibilities that is looked upon by this integration teams. That is the role of this integration team. These integration teams, they have the opportunity to work together. Now, both the managers, both the companies have their own managerial cadre people. They come together. When they work together, it's an opportunity to understand each other, their roles, their functions, their culture, expertise. Now, here, when we say it's an organization, we have the people. The people have their own culture, and the organizational culture is an indifferentiable part as far as these managers are considered. When a company thinks of this alliance part, these people, they have to be convinced. There should be internal training sessions for these people because these managers have worked for the company before entering into the alliance. When they enter the alliance and work together, then there may be they can see the cultural differences. Surprises and unanticipated events or behaviors occur very frequently during alliance implementation. So here there should not be, it should not come as a surprise. For this thing, there should be internal training sessions for the employees. They should be handled properly. They should not feel left out. If not properly prepared, managers may retreat into blaming and stereotyping. Usually, it is a cultural stereotyping. The culture of the organization is imbibed to so much extent that the people are not ready to accept something new. So, adaptation is one of the important thing. Instead of coping with stress and anxiety provoked by any surprises, they may go into the negative phase. So this should not happen. The surprises should be welcomed. And for this, it takes us to the next part, that is the learning part. If the managers have the pre-notion that with the alliance they are going to learn something new, they will have to cope up or adjust with the changes and move ahead with the positive spirit, then things becomes much more simpler and easier to function. Any type of alliance involves some or the other kind of learning part. The first is they learn from the alliance or co-learning, and second thing is learning from partners or captured learning. The first part, learning from alliance or cooperation, co-learning, it deals with the partners learning part. That is when they enter into the alliance, they learn within this alliance, the companies, the employees. In implementing alliances, partners can learn about the business. Now they can jointly discuss about the current trends. They can discover what is the recent trends of market, of consumers, which are the products they are preferred by the customers, which are the new technologies entering into the market, into the industry, who are the competitors. So about the business they can learn, about the tasks, that is refining mutual contributions and work processes. How better the things can be improved, implemented, that can be discussed. About the partner expectations and capabilities. So when the companies are entering into an agreement, even though they have done the SWOT analysis and they know the expectations, but it's not unless and until when actually the implementation parts come, then you understand where does the particular partner or the company lie as far as the expectations and capabilities are considered. And the imbalances in the value distribution may appear. That is, there may be some gaps which may be observed. So that is also a learning part. Learning from partners or captured learning. That is what the partner learns from each other, the employees learn from each other. Clarity of objectives and receptivity. So here, planning an objective and actual implementation through the destiny. It's like, the objectives were set and on the platform, you may find something different. Or the managers may struggle to reach to the expected results. Now, receptivity is the type of learning capabilities. It consists of various internal organization mechanisms that companies engaged in alliances may use to accumulate. So, both of the companies should be receptive in nature. They should understand each other's capabilities. And if there are some lacunas or gaps identified, they should be filled through mutual discussion. Now, the next part is global multilateral alliances. Now, each product division of multi-business corporation is engaged in multiple alliances. Now, here when we say it's a corporate company, global company, corporate company, these companies have multi-business corporations. They are not into a single product or a single industry. They may be into multiple industries with multiple number of products. So for such companies, Gomez Cases has qualified these alliances as constellations. So when you have multi-business corporations, there is a possibility, or usually it does happen, that they frame multiple alliances into one or the other industries. So those companies which are diversified into different businesses and come up with the alliances in their respective area of subunits, it is known as constellations, in which partners are cooperating in one business segment but possibly compete in the another segment. So here if we take the company like Reliance or a company like Tata, they are into different business operations. And in a single business, single industry, for example, you may be into FMCG, you may be into pharmaceutical, you may be into steel industry, you may be into automobile industry. Okay. If the corporate single parent company is having multiple businesses, different industries, and with those different industries, different products are there, and they form alliance with the different companies, then it is the constellations. Now, Dawes and Hamel identified three type of constellations: alliance networks, alliance portfolios, and alliance webs. These were the three parts. Now, alliance networks. These alliance networks are those to which partners contribute to increase the reach, adopt a common standard, or promote a new technology, like Visa, credit card, or Star Airlines. The alliance portfolios are those where a company enters into a partnership with multiple companies with different products, technologies, or markets. Now, the company deals with its partner as a portfolio or on a one to one basis. There is no interaction among partners, only between partners and the core parties. This is one partner, several alliance design. The next is the alliance webs. They are the constellations in which partners contribute and benefit interdependently. That is, it's an approach of several partners, several alliances design. Now, for the several partners, several alliance design, a company should be highly into the diversified market as well as highly diversified product categories. Here one can find some characteristics of alliance networks, that is a common platform, or of alliance portfolios. So some of the characteristics from both of them, alliance networks and alliance portfolios, can be seen in this alliance webs also. Alliance constellation management. So depending upon the type of alliance, the managerial challenges vary. Two issues are found in this alliance network part, the first part. The first is alliance creation and mobilization, and the second is alliance governance and maintenance. Now, both alliance creation and mobilization, it depends upon core companies or on an outsider, that is the maybe either a government body or a new technology developer. Someone has to take the initiative to identify the benefits of those alliances and to sell them to multiple partners. Now, the next is alliance governance and maintenance. Alliance networks must establish a center or a network manager whose role is to make sure that the partners contribute fairly to the partnership and responsibility and be responsible for the common rules. Alliance managers also serve as an information exchange and clearing house for mutual transactions. In Alliance portfolio, the main managerial issues are partner selection and attraction, as well as partner leverage and relationships. So here, alliance creation as well as mobilization and the governance and maintenance part pose these challenges for the managers. When you take into consideration the constellation, alliance constellation management. Now, what are the criteria for successful alliances? Now, individual excellence is one of the successful criteria. Both the partners, when they are strong, have something to contribute, have the positive intention, then it becomes a successful alliance. So, individual excellence is one part. The next is importance, that is, fits strategy of both partners and their long term vision. How the strategies of the companies they fit into the mutual operations and what are their long term views about each other. So, this is one of the criteria for successful alliance. Interdependence. These partners need each other. They have complementary capabilities. If they have the option of nobody can go it alone, then this interdependence will take them ahead. Suppose if one person has the expertise in technology and the other person has expertise in a particular product industry or a service industry, then both of them they know that both of them are independent and alone they cannot travel ahead. So this interdependence is one of the successful key factor for the alliance. Investment. The partners show commitment with their investment part. So this is one of the successful criteria. Information, that is the reasonable open communication, sharing of information among each other. So a company should not hide or restrict any information. Integration. So when both the companies integrate to the utmost possible level, they have their share operating procedures. Numerous connections are there in between both of them. Then the things move ahead towards successful alliance. Institutionalization. That is when you have the clear terminology of responsibilities and roles, clear decision making process, then it leads to the successful alliance. Last but not the least is the integrity. No abuse of the leverages, roles, responsibilities, or leverages given. So a company should not abuse the other company in any way. Willingness to embrace the trust part. So as far as the trust part is maintained, managed, companies move ahead with the successful alliance part. The next part is global mergers and acquisitions. Now here we finished with the strategic alliance part. We move ahead next is the global mergers and acquisitions. In case of mergers, both companies come together. They have their own objectives set and move ahead. In acquisition part, one company acquires the other company. Now here the rationale for cross-border mergers and acquisitions. Now cross-border mergers and acquisitions during 90s. Okay, basically when this globalization part initiated or started, this was the era where the nations globally experienced the mega mergers which took place during this, maybe in the oil and gas sector, the telecommunication sector, the insurance sector, the pharma companies, especially banking industries. There was a rise of these mergers and acquisitions. Now, basically, there are three events which accelerated the growth, or we can say the three factors which gave the impetus for the growth of these mergers and acquisitions. They are single European market. So when the entire Europe was treated as a single European market, which led to the advent of euro, that is with reference to currencies. There used to be a problem while dealing with these nations, the European countries. So here the advent of euro gave an impetus for these mergers and acquisitions. And of course, the Asian crisis in 1997. This Asian crisis gave an opportunity for Western companies to buy Asian assets. That's why we could see the increase in this mergers and acquisitions during this era. Also, the use of shareholder value model of corporate governance started gaining impetus. Now, there are three main value creation objectives behind cross border merger and acquisition. The first one is consolidation, that is, search for economies of scale to increase the profits. So, as more and more companies started coming up, it necessitated the companies to expand their boundaries, geographical boundaries, and search for the customers in the global scene. Second thing was the global reach, that is extension of international markets. So the companies wanted to move ahead. They wanted to enter the international markets. The competencies and acquisitions or options in related or new technologies. Now, as far as global reach is considered, we can see Daimler and Benz having the Chrysler, or Whirlpool and Philips coming together. The Sony Columbia came up with the Vivendi, or Universal Studios. This includes the vertical integration and diversification. So here companies started looking out for the opportunities, and mergers and acquisitions was seen as one of the important twists in the businesses to enter into the global markets. Now, any doubts up till here? In the next session, we will discuss cross-border acquisitions and the performance. We'll move ahead with the mergers and acquisitions. Today we will stop here.